everybody. I am Jessica Hampton. Welcome back to Childcare Confidential. My wonderful co-host Katie is still doing the summer stuff at our schools. So you get just me today. And today we are going to talk about, from an owner's perspective, what I would actually tell myself the night before I opened my first childcare center. The night before I opened my first childcare center, I, of course, couldn't sleep. I remember laying there running everything through my checklist, all in my head. Cribs, check. Licensing binder, check. Toys sanitized, check. Families enrolled, check. I honestly believed that if every box was checked, everything else would just fall right into place. But it didn't. Not because I wasn't prepared, because trust me, I was prepared. I am a planner most of the time. But I was preparing for all of the wrong things. Nobody told me that the easy part of opening a childcare center is getting licensed. And yes, I do know there are some people out there right now that are struggling with licensing, but there's a lot that comes after getting that license in your hand. Nobody told me that the hardest part had absolutely nothing to do with licensing. It had everything to do with people. Today, it's just me behind the microphone. No, Katie, but I want to have the conversation that I wish somebody would have had with me the night before I opened my very first center. Not the polished version, not the version you see today, not the motivational conference version, but the real version. The one I would have actually needed that nobody shared. As you know, I'm Jessica Hampton. I own 2 childcare centers in Indiana, and I love what I do. It's hard sometimes, but we love this work. But a lot of times we pretend that this field is easier than what it really is. And that's why this podcast kind of came about. We believe that leaders deserve the truth. And today's episode is for 3 different people. The first is the person that is dreaming about opening a childcare center someday. We are excited for you. And the second is the owner that just opened and is wondering why they are already mentally and physically exhausted. We have been there. And the third is for every veteran owner listening who's smiling right now because you're remembering your own first week of opening your very first childcare center. This episode is more of a letter to my younger self. 5 things I desperately wish I had known before I unlocked those doors to families for the very first time. And one thing that I'd never change. You're not opening a childcare center. You're becoming an employer. This one blindsided me. I thought my job would be children, curriculum, teaching, which is what I love so much, families, building relationships. Those things matter. But the moment you become an owner, you become responsible for other adults, hiring adults, training adults, coaching adults, having hard conversations with adults that will pretty much say anything back to you. Covering classrooms because adults called off from their responsibilities. Wondering at 6:45 a.m. in the morning why someone who is supposed to open isn't answering their phone, Or maybe they've communicated to somebody else that they can just go ahead and open for them because they're running late. But maybe their name's not on where it should be to open a building. Nobody prepares you for how emotionally draining leadership can become. Children are wonderfully predictable compared to adults, believe it or not. I wish someone would have looked me in the eye and said, Jessica, honey, you're not opening a childcare center. You're building a team. And that team will determine everything. If I could go back, I'd spend less money on decorating the classrooms. Even me, and I like to decorate classrooms and make educational environments and make sure they are perfect to the T. But I wish I had spent more time learning how to hire well, because staffing isn't one part of the business. It's literally your business. Enrollment, it's never finished. This one is one of the biggest mistakes that I see new owners make. They've finally filled up every classroom in their school, and they are excited that they're not going to have to work those 12-hour shifts anymore. And they've got the staffing, they can breathe, and they can stop marketing. Oh, no, 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 you can't. That's a huge mistake. Enrollment isn't an event. It isn't the open house that you hold and hope that all your spots are full. It's a lifestyle, because let's face it, families move, children age out, employers relocate, and life changes. If you wait until you're empty to market, you are already so far behind everything. Today we have systems, we have follow-up, we nurture our leads and make sure we're getting back to people. We stay visible on all of the social medias, even TikTok, which honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of at first. And I'm learning. It's a work in progress, really. But back then, I honestly just thought, okay, if I can get this many kids in here, that means that I can make this amount for payroll, which means that I can have this many teachers. And that means that I don't have to be the kitchen person and the director and work the 12-hour days and be the maintenance person and patch a wall and fix a toilet and teach and jump in just for ratios when needed. I honestly thought if I could fill up the classrooms, I had finished everything. I had made it to the finish line. But it turns out that there's not actually just one finish line, y'all. There's just another lap. The centers that thrive aren't necessarily the ones with the prettiest buildings. Oof, let me say that again. The centers that thrive aren't necessarily the ones with the prettiest buildings. They're the ones that never stop telling their story. And I'll tell you, my two childcare centers in Indiana are both in leased locations. Sometimes people frown upon that. They think, well, you could make more money from your business if you bought your own location. But for me, I wanted to do it all debt-free. And that was important to me. And so I stuck with the leased locations. I didn't get the biggest loan. I didn't have the prettiest classrooms. In fact, when I opened, I couldn't even afford to furnish the whole school. So I furnished 2 rooms in hopes that nobody would want to see the rest of the empty rooms that just kind of sat there with brown carpet. Because that's reality. I didn't have the prettiest building, It was all a work in progress, and it all took time to what you see today. We didn't start that way. Parents, they're not there to buy curriculum, they're there to buy trust. I would spend thousands of dollars a year on the best curriculum that I thought was possible. And then I'd get in and I'd hate one little thing about it. And I'd want to switch to the next best curriculum. And it was a revolving door of spending money on different curriculums that were fine. We were educating, but the parents weren't there for the curriculum. They were there because of the trust. And that one changed everything for me. Because as owners, we spend thousands a year on curriculum to find the perfect one, or on the software to find the perfect software to manage our whole school. And let me tell you, software is mind boggling because we are in the midst of switching it all. And I hate switching it all, but you have to find things that work for your school that aren't insanely expensive. We would spend money on the perfect furniture when we could, but at first, I was buying furniture off Craigslist. Yeah, way back then when we had Craigslist all the time, and Facebook Marketplace when that kind of came around. I wanted the perfect technology. Our school age programs had iPads, our pre-K programs and our preschooler programs, they all had iPads, and we had all the data, and we had games they could play that would help us with assessments and all the perfect technology. And yes, those things do matter, but families aren't asking themselves which curriculum has the best learning objectives. Are they? No. They're asking things like, can I trust these people with my child? Do they care? Will they communicate clearly with me? Will they keep my baby safe? Do they genuinely know my child, or is my child just another number to them? Trust is built one conversation at a time. One phone call, one follow up, one tour, and sometimes that one difficult conversation that was handled really well that helped them to understand why we do things the way that we do. Curriculum might get someone interested. Being nationally accredited, yeah, it's going to get people interested, but trust is what gets them enrolled. And trust is what's going to keep them there. We have faced some hard lessons in our years of being a school. And there are times where I couldn't blame families if they left because I was heartbroken, because I didn't understand what was happening. So, how could I make them understand? But trust was built and there. And that's when you get the families that stick by you and support you and send you messages on Facebook years later on the difference that you made in their child's life. It's all about trust. Set boundaries before you actually need them. Oof, I wish my younger self knew that because she certainly did not. I still struggle with boundaries today. I could fill up a work week in a heartbeat and be a workaholic, or I could set some boundaries and say, this is the time I actually have to work, and this is the time I actually have for my family, and this is the time I actually have for me. And that is hard. This lesson cost me a lot, because every policy I delayed eventually became a problem. Late pickups, oh my goodness. I would go back to the school because a parent didn't show up on time. And I felt bad for my staff because they had young kids and mine were a little bit older. And I'd go back and let that staff person leave so that I could sit there with the child that didn't get picked up. Mm. What I needed was a policy, and an enforced policy, not just a policy written on paper that nobody looks at, but a policy that everybody knew, everybody enforced. And I needed to put some high stakes on that policy. So I'll tell you what, if you're picking up at our school after 6 o'clock close time, you're going to be paying a hefty penalty, $5 a minute, or maybe it's $10 a minute now. I got to think about that one. I think it's up to $10 a minute now per child. If you have 3 kids, that's $30 a minute. That seems like a lot to people. It is a lot. And it's that way on purpose because my staff's time is valuable. And after I had sat there with more than one kid for almost 2 hours after close and had to find food in the kitchen for them because I couldn't watch a child not have dinner, I put in some harsh policies to avoid my staff having to be there for 2 hours after a child was supposed to be picked up. That's crazy. And it wasn't fair to them. So, yeah, we put a steep penalty in it and we enforce it. And it has to be paid immediately or you can't come back because our staff is valuable to us and they are a priority in our schools. We didn't want to keep having the problems. What about late tuition? What's your policy on that? We take payments on Fridays. And if you're late paying, you get charged $10 a day until Thursday of the next week. And if we don't have your tuition by Thursday, you can't come on Friday because we're not going to continue to let your balance get higher because we've done it too many times and it's cost us tens of thousands of dollars that we could have invested in something more than collecting late payments. It's harsh a little bit, but you know what? Our parents pay on time and they know the policy because we enforce it. It's not just something written on a paper. But it took me tens of thousands of dollars to stop being walked on, to start setting boundaries. Because it was the families that I knew, I trusted, I loved, I just wanted to help that did the most damage mentally and physically and financially to us when they just didn't pay or show up to pay again. It's a hard lesson learned, and I wish I would have had somebody tell my younger self, enforce your policies. What about late messages through your parent communication app? We have a rule at our schools. We close at 6 o'clock. Staff are not to respond to messages until the next day if they come in after 6 o'clock. Now, if there's an emergency or something, that is one thing. But as a parent, I'm going to message when I remember something. That could be at night. But as a parent, I also know that I'm not going to get a response back that night because my staff's time is valuable. So we had to put in boundaries. There's a few special exceptions, an emergency, things like that. But those special exceptions, those favors, it always starts small. And man, it costs a lot. Start from day one. Because then suddenly you've accidentally created an expectation that you never intended to create when you do one small favor at a time. One sentence has stayed with me over the years. The handbook that you write on a calm Tuesday saves you on a chaotic Friday. Oof, let me say that again. The handbook that you write on a calm Tuesday saves you on a chaotic Friday. Policies aren't about controlling people, they're about protecting relationships, protecting your team. Because when expectations are clear and communicated well, conflict decreases. If you haven't written the policy yet, it's probably because someday you're really going to need it. You probably need to go ahead and sit down and write out that policy. If you don't, you're going to be living the hard lessons that I've lived. And also, don't forget that you definitely cannot pour from an empty owner. This one took me decades to learn, to be honest. I was your classic workaholic. I put work over a lot of things. I continued my education further and further. Did you hear that, Indiana? Educated teachers, owners, directors are important. But we need to make sure that we do not pour from an empty owner cup. Because remember, you are the thermostat, and everything you do when you walk into that building reflects on what you're bringing in with you. I thought burnout looked dramatic. I thought people were just not doing it right. I could do it differently. I thought it meant crying every day or wanting to quit. But that's not really what my burnout looked like. It wasn't crying every day or wanting to quit. I love what I do. It's hard. Right now, it's really hard in Indiana. But my burnout looked a little differently. It looked like answering emails at midnight because that's the first time I got to lay down and have a minute to think. It looked like missing family moments that were so important to me, but I couldn't quite get there. It looked like feeling guilty every time I wasn't working, like I wasn't doing enough, even though I was nonstop. I convinced myself that believing that I needed rest was just laziness. And somewhere along the way, I even convinced myself that sacrificing everything made me a better leader. Oof. Hard lesson learned because it didn't. It didn't make me a better leader. It made me more tired. It made me less patient. It made me less creative. And the healthier I've become over the last few years is the stronger that our organization has become. Yeah. When I stopped putting it all on me and I started getting healthier and I started delegating the correct way and communicating the correct way, I realized that we could be a stronger organization. Leadership isn't about proving how much you can endure to survive, even though that's what I thought it was. It's really about building something that doesn't require you to survive it. Oof. And you know what? I'm still working on that like every single week. But I had tried to step back several times over the years. And I was called back in because I didn't have the right systems. I didn't have the right people in the right places. And I had to go back to square one and say, okay, what thermostat do I want my school to look like? And I just sat down with a notebook one day and started writing what I wanted my school to look like. I wanted to walk in the door and be greeted by name. And that wasn't happening. I'd walk in the door and nobody would say hi, good morning, nothing, not even look up from their computers. And it got me thinking, if that's how I'm greeted, how are my families greeted when I'm not here? And I wrote that down. And I kept writing down different things and the different culture that I wanted to create, which has gotten us to where we are today. But I wish my younger self would have known how to do it. Because listen, I fell flat on my face more than once doing it the wrong way. And that's not easy, but it's humbling and you learn from it. The one thing that I'd never change now, even after everything that I've just told you about all of the things that I wish I knew, you might think that I'd go back and talk myself out of opening my first center because, man, it was a lot of work. Not 12-hour days, more like 23-hour days and a little bit of sleep. There were nights I didn't even go to sleep at all for days. And I kept functioning until I'd crash and have to get some sleep. That's not how it should be. So you'd think that maybe I wouldn't want to open that first center after all of the life I have lived in my 25 years of early childhood. But you know what? You'd be wrong. Not a chance. I'd sign that lease again, even though I felt like I was going to throw up in the parking lot signing a lease for that much money. And you know what? Today it's only like a quarter of what we pay for things like that. I'd sign it again every single time because those classrooms, they changed me. The children changed me. The families that trusted me changed me. The challenges that I faced, whew, they stretched me. Sometimes to the point where I thought, you can't stretch anymore. The first center that I opened introduced me to a version of myself that I didn't even know existed. Was it hard? Oh, hell yeah, it was hard. It was crazy hard. Was it worth it? Absolutely, without question. So if you're listening today and maybe you're sitting in your own version of the night before opening, or maybe you just opened and you're scared, you're second guessing yourself, you're wondering if you're ready. Trust me, I don't think I was looking back. Here's what I tell you. You probably aren't. You probably aren't ready. Neither was I. None of us are. But don't wait until you're fearless. Go build it, fear and all. Just go in with your eyes open. Make smart choices. Make smart financial choices from the get-go. Know your numbers. You've heard it from almost every coach in the industry. You have to know your numbers. But do it. Do it with all the fear. Do it with feeling like you're going to throw up in the parking lot when you sign a lease. Just do it. But do it with clear eyes. Let's recap today. You're not opening a childcare. You're becoming an employer. And also, in case anybody didn't tell you, you will have employer taxes on top of payroll and payroll fees. Also, nobody told me that either. Just a heads up. You're becoming an employer. Enrollment never ends. Marketing never ends. Parents buy trust before they buy the curriculum. Mm. Boundaries protect your relationships. If you're like me, you want to give everything you can to everybody else. It's not really feasible. And you're going to burn out and learn the hard way if you don't set boundaries. Having that handbook lets your parents know the expectations and the rules at your center, like late payment fees or late pickup fees. You can sit down and explain to the parents why your fees are so high, because your employees' time is valuable, just as valuable as theirs is. And your center can never be healthier than its owner. Oof, oof, that one stings a little bit right here. And y'all keep trying to get me emotional on this podcast, but I'm going to keep it together. Let me say that again, though. Your center, your school, your in-home, your ministry, wherever you're at, it can never be healthier than its owner. If today's episode hit home, I want you to share it with somebody who's dreaming about opening a childcare center. We see it all the time on the Facebook group chats and different things, people asking questions about opening a center. Share it with somebody. Share the things that maybe you've thought about the night before you opened your first center. Share about having structure and plans and enforcing your regulations and your policies. Or maybe it's somebody who's in year one and wondering if they're ever going to stop struggling. And if you're building your own center right now and you wish you had experienced owners in your corner, that's why Katie and I created the Vault. It's not because we have everything figured out. You're never going to see us stand up here and tell you, if you just do this, you can make this. Because every school is different. We created it because we've been through it. We've made enough mistakes that you don't have to. We would love to have you join us on the Vault, of course. But if you can't, or if you're join any coaching group, and if the financial reason is an issue of why you can't join us with the Vault, reach out to us via email. You can check it out at childcareconfidential.com. And let's talk about it, because we want to see that everybody in this field has the real conversations. The ones that, we don't really talk about in this field. We don't connect with other schools. It's almost like we have everything backwards right now in our field. And we need to talk about how to fix it. And we need to do it together. So we would love to have you, but please just have somebody that you're mentoring and somebody that's mentoring you, because it is so, so important. And this industry, they need the hard conversations. It doesn't happen when we all stay quiet. We don't learn from our mistakes when we don't share them. You guys know what I'm talking about. Until next time, I want you to keep leading boldly. Use your voice. Speak up for the children in your community and the early childhood educators, because that's what you are. You're educators, and some of us are business owners. We're not babysitters. And it's time we start talking about that. We will see you next time on Childcare Confidential. Again, I'm Jessica Hampton. Katie will be back with us soon. And I hope that you got something today that you can use every day in your schools. Have a wonderful week. We will see you soon. Bye.